Ayo, Isidro. Holler at the people. 10,000 tacos.
Welcome to 10,000 Tacos. 10,000 Tacos is a podcast that takes a look at the world, the taco world and beyond, through the eyes of a taquero. I'm Isidro Salas, your host, and I grew up in a taco truck, and I want to share with you those experiences and many of those lessons that have shaped the way I look at the world today.
10,000 tacos. Yo, 10,000 tacos.
If you are a returning listener, thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming back. And a special thanks because you guys are helping share our podcast. We have seen that there is more interest in the last couple of shows, and we know it's because you guys are spreading the word. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And for those of you who are here for the first time, thank you for giving us a shot. Chances are you probably heard this podcast from a friend, a relative, or a coworker, or just were curious when you searched for a podcast to do with tacos and 10,000 Tacos popped up. Either way, we are glad you are here. On today's episode, we dive into one of these lessons that, well, of course, I've learned so much from being raised in a taco truck, but one of these lessons that I learned while I was kicking back one day, selling tacos with my dad. So I wanted to talk about something that came out of that. There are a lot of things that came out of that, but this was something that proved to be very, very important. Something that is, there's no easy way to put it because it's very complicated. And no, it's not making salsa, right? Even though salsa can be complicated depending on the ingredients that you use. And no, it wasn't making the tacos de tripa or lengua or these other meats that are pretty exotic. It wasn't that. Like many things that I learned at such a young age, things that I didn't start using until way, way down the line, which is typical, right? I guess, both tacos and the cooking techniques I knew I can do back then, but I just didn't start using them with intention until I was much older. On today's episode, I want to talk about pardon. Yeah, pardon. Perdon in Spanish. Forgiveness. Yeah. Forgiveness may sound a little washy or whatever, but forgiveness. And I know, like the previous episode, that this word forgiveness can be a bit polarizing, especially in cultures where the word implies weakness, where it implies that those who hurt you are allowed to get away with it, and that forgiving someone is like saying it's okay that they did what they did to hurt you and that they simply got away with it. That's what forgiveness implies. In my opinion, it's a misconception. I wouldn't believe that before. I mean, a long time ago, I thought the same thing. I thought forgiving somebody was a form of weakness, just like I described before. But today, what I've come to learn about the true meaning of forgiveness and the power behind it, the action, man, it is pretty awesome when you grasp it. And I want to share a little bit of my journey, what I went through and how an event way back then, followed by what I thought at the time was a really weird conversation I had with my dad on one of those many nights that we were out selling tacos. Specifically, his example of what he did and his actions and his sacrifice when it came to forgiveness and what that meant for me. How it made such a huge difference later on in my life. How recalling his conversation about perdón, forgiveness, helped me deal with the personal crisis that I was experiencing later on in life. We'll begin, let's start with this. Have you ever been wronged by either a situation or more specifically another person where you were done dirty? Dirty, right? Somebody did you dirty, like, somebody just did something bad to you. If this was a room, for example, full room, and I asked all of you to raise your hand if you had been done wrong by somebody else, most of you would raise your hands. I would expect that all of you. And those of you who don't raise your hands, then that means you're not human. Because everyone has been done wrong at some point or another in their lives. Really. Everyone has been hurt, and everybody has hurt somebody else. I think that's what makes us human. And it isn't right or wrong. That's not what we're talking about. But what this is about is how we've moved on from those things and those spots, being in those spots. Now, we all know someone, or we know of someone who just refuses to move on from a grievance, something that was done wrong to them. We all have that person who we can say, man, that person holds on to stuff like if it's a piece of luggage, they just won't get rid of it. And let me ask you this. Of those that hold on to things, that just don't let go of things, do they look happy? And we're not here to discuss what happiness looks like, although that may be it for a different episode. But simply put, of the people who hold on to grudges, do they seem happy? Most likely not. And we all know the longer you hold on to something, the heavier it gets. I mean, think about it. Even in physics, next time you go out and get a taco, hold on to it, hold it out in your hand for a while. Now, I don't know how you can do that, because I personally would just want to put it in my mouth. But just try this experiment. A taco isn't that heavy. But if you hold it with, let's say, your right hand, and you just hold it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it'll get heavy. Even though that taco isn't heavier in itself, it's just you can't hold on to things and not expect it to hurt physically. So what do you think happens when it's an emotional thing? And again, we know people like that. And sometimes those people may be us. Yes, this can happen to all of us. This can happen to any one of us at any given time. I mean, it happened to me. And in some cases recently, it continues to happen. It happened to my parents while they were running their business. There were people who misguided them, who did them wrong. I mean, they were involved in real estate deals that people weren't as honest, and ended up being a bad thing for my parents. Or tax accountant who didn't do the things that they were supposed to do as a tax accountant, and later bit my parents in the butt. We all have to go through these things, yet we all have to deal with them. So forgiveness then is about how you move on from these wrongs. Forgiveness then becomes more about happiness, peace, rather than vengeance, or to think that by you forgiving them, it is them taking advantage of you. That's not what forgiveness is about. I mean, think about tacos, right? Tacos make me happy. And if I don't forgive those who do me wrong, then I can't enjoy my tacos because I won't be happy. I'd rather have tacos. Let me share with you something very personal, and how a conversation with my dad many years ago in that truck helped me get past a bad situation. So about a dozen years ago, I was at the tail end of a really, really bad relationship. I had been in this relationship for almost a decade, and this relationship ended pretty bad. And simply put, I was cheated on. My partner at the time cheated on me. I mean, how do you know if somebody cheats on you? Of course, you could find out through friends, or you could find out through Facebook or whatever. But in this case, I knew because, well, let's just say I walked into the house where I lived at, and, well, I saw my ex-partner and her new partner doing some cochinadas. And when you see that, then you know you got clear proof. But but just before you place any judgment, let's just put it out in the clear. I mean, in all full transparency, we both were doing. I wasn't Mr. Innocento here. I was doing some bad stuff too. The only difference is I just didn't get caught. But anyway, the point is that, yeah, we were both doing some bad stuff. And, she was hurting me and I was hurting her. And just seeing that act, watching that, was really painful. It was really horrible. And I just couldn't get past that pain. It was just an awful pain. Almost every day I relived it, just seeing that image, and I couldn't get past it. It was just miserable. There was no way to live. And I just thought, man, I could never forgive her for that. So how do you move on from stuff like that? For me, I thought, well, I'll do what I've always done. Well, hook up with others and I'll be with other people so that I could forget. And of course, that's fun for a little bit. That lasts for a short period of time, and it's mostly at night and once in a great while in the mornings. But I'd been down that road before, many, many, many times before. And I tell you, I knew back then it didn't work. It never worked. And why was I expecting that to work now? Well, I was searching for ways to do that. So I was taking care of my body. I started to work out a little bit better. I started to feel better about my body. I started to eat better, and I was feeling a lot better as time went on, but it still wasn't getting rid of it until I started to turn towards forgiveness. And I thought, man, that's crazy. Everything else was working, but I just couldn't see myself forgiving this person because it seemed crazy to me. So I chose that road, but even though it was weird, I went towards it. I chose it. And why did I choose it? Because it was something that I thought was outside the boundaries of anger. Forgiveness for me at that time started making sense because it felt like I was getting less angry the more I was acknowledging that forgiveness was that key. And that just felt better. So one of the things that helped me realize that is I started to think about a situation that I went through when I was a kid. I was about 12 years old, where my dad was involved in an altercation with one of my uncles, where it resulted in my uncle punching my dad. So, a little bit of background in this. One of my uncles lived with us, and he's a brother of my mom. So he had parked his car where it was in the driveway. And remember, if you recall in some of my previous episodes, when we were younger, we used to park the taco truck in our driveway. So as my dad was getting home late, my uncle had blocked his way. And of course, my dad has the right of way. He's bringing the truck home. So anyway, long story short, my dad told him to move his car. Well, my uncle didn't take lightly to that, and he went at my dad and he punched him. And I wasn't there, but from what I understand, my sister and one of my brothers jumped on him, and they just they put a beating on him, deservedly so. But it wasn't until a couple of weeks later, or maybe a month, I don't know, it was shortly after that my father and I were sitting there in the catering truck, and as I mentioned before, when we were out selling tacos, sometimes there were times where it was sort of slow, where there weren't customers in between. And we just sat around and we talked. And in one of these times, I was clearly bothered by what had happened. My father knew that. And so we started talking about it. And I mentioned to him that I was pissed. I was mad at my uncle that he had done that. And I was just mad. I have always been a very insightful person, even when I was young. And to me, that didn't make sense. And I was trying to make sense of it. But my dad was looking at me, and while I was expressing this anger, he was just looking at me. And he had this face as if he was looking at a foreigner, right? His face was tilting to the right and kind of like looking at me like, who is this kid? Like if he didn't know me. And I was kind of perplexed by that. I was like, but Dad, he hit you. My dad looked at me. He's like, Did he hit you? And I'm like, no, he hit you. And he's like, yeah, but he didn't hit you. He hit me. And why are you mad if I'm no longer mad? And I was just, what? Why shouldn't you be mad? Somebody punched you in the face. Why shouldn't you be mad? And he was like, well, I'm not mad. And if I'm not mad, why should you be mad? And again, that just wasn't making any sense to me. It's like, how can you not be mad? But little by little, I started realizing, wow, a couple of weeks later, I started realizing the importance of that talk, and it started to make a little more sense to me. And I thought, well, what started to make sense is if my dad was angry and he was the one that was making the tacos, then if he was angry, those tacos wouldn't come out good. right? And if those tacos didn't come out good, that meant that we couldn't have those repeat customers. That's the reason they came back, because the tacos were so good. But the other thing that I started seeing down the line was the relationship that he had with my mom, his wife, the mother of his children. That relationship was more important to him than him being angry. And think about that. Nobody had thought about what my mom was going through. This was her brother that punched her husband, which led to her 2 children attacking her brother. Nobody thought about what she felt as a mother, as a wife, as a sister. But my dad did. That's why he was able to forgive my uncle, because his relationship with his wife was a lot more important. He needed to have a strong relationship with his wife, with the mother of his children. Remember, for many years, they worked next to each other, by each other, every single day, side by side. Have you ever worked with somebody that is pissed off at you, or that is upset with you, or you're upset with? A lot of work doesn't get done. Certainly bosses don't like that. But for my parents, working with each other was their livelihood. They needed to work next to each other peacefully and happy, because it's how they paid their bills. It's how they stocked the truck. It's how they made future sales. It's how we were able to grow up with all the things we had. It's what they gave us. It's what they gave us. It was for us, their children, their family. Gave for us. Forgive. I learned back then that forgiveness is not about the other person. It's about you. It's about you. It's about moving on to the more important things in life. It's about the relationships with those you love and how they are affected if you're happy or if you're angry. But most importantly, it's about you, yourself. It is about releasing you from the pain that you carry when you hold on to those grudges. It's releasing you from that pain so you could find peace and ultimately enjoy tacos. Assuming that you like me, assuming that tacos make you happy. And that's what forgiveness is. It allows you to be happy and enjoy those tacos. Tacos al perdón. And as we're wrapping up the show, again, I'd like to leave you with a talk quote. And for those of you who are new, a talk quote is a quote with a little bit of a taco twist to it. And it has to do, of course, with tacos. And in order to make a good taco, what do you need? You need tortillas. Cannot have a good taco without good tortilla. So today's talk quote is, tortillas don't hold on to grudges. Tortillas hold on to the meat. And that is all for this episode. Again, we'd like to thank you for giving us your time. I know that there are many other great podcasts out there that you probably listen to. If you're like me, I enjoy listening to a lot of podcasts, and there's just sometimes too many. So the fact that you're here, thank you very much for giving us your time. It is awesome. Until next time, I'm Isidro Salas, and this is 10,000 Tacos.